Hi, ladies. This is Mrs. O'Connell. I'll warn you in advance that I am alone at home with Flora, so you may hear her chime in from time to time in the background during these notes. So my apologies in advance. And she is looking at me very studiously right now, wondering, seeming to know that I'm talking about her. Okay, so as I go through these notes about poetry, the Edpuzzle will stop um, on its own from time to time, and you will have the opportunity to answer a few questions. So, poetry. Defined is literature in which special intensity is given to the expression of feelings and ideas through the use of distinctive style, sound, and rhythm. So imagine how music makes you feel things, depending on the way it sounds, the rhythm, the lyrics can make you feel angry, irritable, peaceful, sad, or triumphant, among other emotions. Poems work in the same way, but instead of sound and rhythm created by instruments, they use the sound and rhythm of words. In songs with good lyrics, the melody combines with the words to create an intense feeling. Similarly, in poetry, the sound of the words works together with their meaning for more emotional impact. Take a minute, write the definition of poetry in your own words. Okay, some elements of a poem to be mindful of. We have a line, which is indicated by the red arrow, the first red arrow, the thinner one, which is a group of words together on one line of the poem. A stanza is a group of lines arranged together to separate ideas in a poem, almost like paragraphs. And you'll see stanzas of varying lengths, and we'll talk about some of them have specific names. So a line of poetry is not like a sentence. Just because the words are on one line, it doesn't mean that the complete thought is finished. When reading poetry and you reach the end of a line and there's no punctuation after the last word, you shouldn't pause, but rather continue reading as you would any sentence. For example, you would read the following like so. I lie in bed fully awake. The darkness breathes to the pace of a dog snoring. The film is replayed to sounds of an intricate blues guitar. And this comes from Late Movies with Skylar by Michael Ondaatje. I'm sure I've messed that up. The same way you would read, so the way that I've read it is the same way that you would read it if it was written this way. I lie in bed fully awake. The darkness breathes to the pace of a dog snoring. The film is replayed to sounds of an intricate blues guitar. So if you're like me, this might frustrate you and make you question, well, what's the point of writing it or spacing it differently if you don't read it any differently? And of course, that makes me think of Leslie Knope. If you're a Parks and Rec fan, this particular scene, anything can be a slam poem if you say it like this. So it gets at the same idea that what makes a poem if it's the same words, looking back at these two examples, the same words, just different spacing in terms of lines, but the way you read it doesn't change. So why is it a poem then? So this does not mean that what appears on a single line of poetry is not important. So that's what you want to remember. When reading poetry or when writing your own, pay close attention to how the lines are being broken up. A line of poetry does not have to end when the sentence ends, and a period or comma does not have to appear at the end of the line either. Here are some examples. Notice how the poets break the line. Okay, the length of the lines and the line breaks affect many aspects of the reader's experience, including the sound of the poem. When people read your poem out loud or in their heads, they will pause slightly at the end of each line, even though you can kind of just read it, continue the flow of reading it as if it were just written as a regular sentence. The speed of reading, shortening or lengthening the lines can speed up or slow down the way people read. How the poem looks on the page. Does the poem look light, delicate, with a lot of white space around the lines, or are the lines packed solidly together? Lastly, emphasis. Words at the end of a line seem more important than the words in the middle. So by creating line breaks, you can add emphasis to specific words in a line. Okay, unfortunately, with the Edpuzzle platform, we can't circle 3 lines underline 3 lines and circle 1 stanza here. But what I'll ask you to do in the question is write 1 line and then write 1 stanza. Okay, another thing to consider in poetry is poetic form. Form is the appearance of the words on the page, including the length of lines, their rhythms, their system of rhymes, and repetition. So the example here that I've given, Easter Wings by George Herbert, is a specific type of poem that I'll show you later on other examples of. I think pretty sure I have other examples of this. But in this specific example, the poem literally takes the form of the subject, which is wings. So you can see that the lines are arranged such that they look like actual wings. And the name of this is a concrete poem because it takes the shape of its subject. So I want you to take a minute and think about what you notice about the form of this poem and write your response. Consider the length of the lines, their rhythms, their system of rhymes, and repetition. And this is one of my favorite poems. Mary Oliver, she just passed away a couple years ago. Okay, other poetic forms. So some stanzas of certain lengths have specific names. So we have a stanza of 4 lines would be called a quatrain. A stanza of 2 lines would be called a couplet. And then other types of poems you may have studied. Some of them we will study in this class. You may have studied ballads, probably in British literature, which is a poem that usually tells a story that is similar to a folktale. It is often written in quatrains and usually in lines that are iambic tri-meter. Hopefully you read Lady of Shalott as a junior, but that's a good example of a ballad. An elegy is a poem that is sad and thoughtful and often said in lament of a person who has died, sort of like a poetic obituary. We're going to study elegies in this course, and you'll actually write your own. And you can write elegies for people or things that have literally died, or for ideas or concepts that you want to commemorate, that you think have ceased to exist. An epic is a long narrative poem, and a sonnet, Shakespeare is famous for his series of sonnets, is a poem of 14 lines using any of a number of formal rhyme schemes and typically having 10 syllables per line. Here would have been an opportunity for you to match each of these terms with their definitions, but we can't really do that in this platform, unfortunately. Okay, let's talk about sound in poetry, and this comes from Mary Oliver, again, one of my favorite poets of all time. She says, "To make a poem, we must make sounds, not random sounds, but chosen sounds. How much does it matter what kinds of sounds we make? How do we choose what sounds to make? Go does not sound like stop. Also, in some way, the words do not feel the same. Hurry up does not sound or feel like its opposite, slow down. Hurry up wrestles with activity, leaps to its final punch. Slow down pours from the tongue, as flat as two plates. Sounds differ, sounds matter. A rock is not a stone, but why is a rock not a stone? Something to consider. And I should note that were we in class together, I have a handout that has more of Mary Oliver's thoughts on sound in poetry. She looks at, and hopefully we'll do this when we're back together, she looks at a Robert Frost poem that uses just very wispy sounds to create a kind of peaceful, serene moment in time. Rhythm is the beat created by the sounds of the words in a poem. Stress or accent. A line of poetry is filled with syllables. When a syllable is given emphasis, it is called a stressed syllable. Stress is the emphasis given to the syllable. We're not going to spend a lot of time looking at stress or accents in your poetry. They're going to be your poems in this class. I mean, you can do whatever you want with stress and accents, but they will be a little more freeform. So notice in this example, water has two syllables, water. The first syllable, wa, is the stressed syllable. It is pronounced with more emphasis than the second syllable, ter, which is the unstressed syllable. Rhyme, words that sound alike because they share the same ending vowel and consonant sounds. For example, lamp and stamp share the short a vowel sound and share the combined consonant sound. Reasons to rhyme. To give enjoyment. Rhyme is pleasing to the ear when done well. A lot of you do this in your children's books really nicely. It adds a musical element to the poem and creates a feeling of rightness, of pieces fitting together. It also makes a poem easier to memorize since the rhyme echoes in the reader's mind afterward like a melody. Other reasons to rhyme. To deepen the meaning of the poem. Rhyming two or more words draws attention to them and connects them in the reader's mind. Lastly, to strengthen form. In many traditional forms, a regular pattern of rhymes are at the ends of the lines. This means that even if the poem is being read out loud, listeners can easily hear where the line ends and can hear the shape of the poem. Rhyme scheme is a pattern of rhyming words or sounds, usually end rhyme, but not always. And it uses the letters of the alphabet to use the letters of the alphabet to represent sounds to be able to visually see the pattern. So in this stanza from Mary Had a Little Lamb, you can see the rhyme scheme is indicated by the letters on the right. And any letters that are the same indicate that the last word or syllable in the line rhymes. So Mary had a little lamb, its fleece as white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. Snow and go rhyme, so they share the letter B. Here's another example. Robert Frost poem. You can see that I've indicated the rhyme scheme by also using this kind of color scheme. The stanza 2 rhyme scheme is C, D, C, C, D. So fair, where, and there rhyme, and claim and same rhyme. And he follows the same rhyme scheme throughout the poem. So the letters change because the sound of the rhyme changes, but it's always one letter, second letter, first letter, second letter. Okay, I will ask that you label the rhyme scheme here. So write the letters in the space provided, just in order that this rhyme scheme goes. So just to give you a little hint, it would start with AA because gold and hold rhyme. End rhyme. A word at the end of one line rhymes with a word at the end of another line. So for example, Hector the collector collected bits of string, collected dolls with broken heads and rusty bells that would not ring. String and ring create a rhyme, and those words come at the end of the line, so that's end rhyme. Internal rhyme occurs when a word inside a line rhymes with another word in the same line. This comes from Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. You probably read it. If not, you should. Ah, distinctly I remember was in the bleak December. Remember and December rhyme. Near rhyme is also known as imperfect or close enough rhyme. This occurs when words share either the same vowel or consonant sound, but not both. Um, different vowel sounds, the long O, and different vowel sounds, long O and O sounds. Ooh sounds, because lose is the ooh sound, but they share the same consonant sound, S. So rose and lose, different vowel sounds. The O and the oo are different, but the same consonant sound, S. Refrain, you probably know this from music. Refrain is a sound, word, phrase, or line repeated regularly in a poem, usually at the end of each stanza or verse, such as the chorus in a song. So here we have kind of an alternating repeated refrain. Lay the bent to the bonny broom, fa la 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 la. Take a minute to write, since you can't circle, write the refrain from Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven in the space provided. So some figurative language that we've already studied, that these are also poetic devices that you'll need to know for this unit. Things like alliteration, allusion, similes, metaphors, extended metaphors, and symbolism, assonance, consonance, imagery, hyperbole, automatopoeia, and personification. And again, unfortunately, we can't do this because of this platform. Consonance is similar to alliteration, except repeated consonant sounds can be anywhere in the words, not just at the beginning. So we've studied alliteration and assonance. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds in words. Consonance is the repetition of consonant sounds in words. So see in this example how a lush kept plush, capped slow, will mouthed to flesh, burst, gush, the repeated sh sound in each of these words. Assonance is the repeated vowel sounds in lines, often creating near rhyme or sometimes creating rhyme. So here we have the repeated E sound. Notice that it's even created by the Y in the words stormy and ecstasy. An extended metaphor is a comparison between two things that continues for several lines or possibly the entire length of a work. This is another one of my favorite poems, which compares fog rolling into a city to a little cat. So the fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches and then moves on. Notice this is also a free verse poem. It has no rhyme scheme. Okay, hopefully you have one of your haiku poems with you. If not, create one right now. Consider what you learned today about sound and rhythm and poetry and write a haiku poem in the space provided.